side, this whole side of Norwood's power is out.
Oh my
like,
gosh.
completely out.
That building still has
Kroger, Wendy's is not open.
Global.
Kroger's is open, how? What in the heck? Oh my gosh.
I wonder if Jimmy John's open.
How is Wendy's open? Or they're closed, how is Kroger's open though?
Is McDonald's open?
McDonald's
No.
is not open. Oh, so that's how people are gonna remove this.
Oh jeez.
Holy cow.
We better not watch a pileup happen, I swear. So search and rescue crews, guys, were called here because 25 cars were underwater.
Now it's...
There's 2 feet of water in there. Holy cow.
That's crazy.
Oh gosh.
Oh,
What's going on right here?
Go up there. Honestly, go up there.
I would turn right and then turn left and then come back down. That's what I would do.
Honestly, go up there. Who cares?
Oh, a tree fell.
Go.
Look.
Holy cow, yeah, a tree freaking fell. It fell on top of the power lines.
Yeah, it did.
That's bad. A tree fell on top of the power lines. Poor people.
You guys
How
filming
is that
this?
holding?
Yeah, I'm filming.
This. How is that holding that?
That fire truck though has been running all over the
The
place.
same fire truck has been running up and down
It's
the
there.
Montgomery Road.
We actually had one lady contact us with her story of that night. It was Lori Burkhart. She said that her daughter and her were actually on their way home from Hamilton, Ohio, where it looked completely beautiful, like no issues, nothing at all. She called her husband just to let them know that they were on their way home, and he basically said, hey, be careful, there's a storm here, you know, and she said that she just kind of thought it was funny because where they were at that point in time, it was really beautiful. She said that when they got to Laughlin on 75 South, the rain began coming down pretty hard, and everybody at that point slowed down to about 25 miles an hour. She said that she just saw a lot of cars parked on the side of the road, and people were just going extremely slow. When they got to the 562 exit, there was cars stopped because there was a huge buildup of water underneath that underpass. And, you know, she said that she saw a couple of cars drive through the water, so then she began to try to. And then the water actually came up, covered her hood, and began to make the car stall out. And then immediately she said that she just put the car in reverse and got out of the water because it actually began to lift her car off the ground. She said that when they first got there, it was around 2 feet deep at that underpass, but then around half an hour to 45 minutes later, it actually rose another foot. The water, she said, was also coming into their car, into the floorboards, and then was slowly rising. This is what she said. She said, I knew as a mom, as a parent, because my daughter was in the car, I had to keep myself together and find a way to make it home safe. I felt as though I was going to try to cross the river with my car to get to my side of town to Norwood. She says that they were just completely terrified and that the only possible alternative was to turn around on 562 and go back up the exit ramp onto 75 South, go all the way down to Vine, and then to Tennessee, which it was still flooded there as well. She said that they actually were having to drive around where the flooding was, sometimes on the opposite side of the road. And then there was an accident at the bottom of the hill by Klosterman's, which made them have to turn around again. She said that they were going towards UC, but on the opposite side of Reading Road, and they continued until they got to Victory Parkway by Xavier, where there was no flooding at that time, and that they actually finally made it home safe. Another lady that actually contacted us was Linda Hooks. She lives on Globe Avenue, and she was telling us that they had a lot of storm damage. They had 18 inches of sewer water back up into their basement. There was tons of stuff ruined, and everything had to be thrown away, even their washer and dryer. 2 feet of drywall had to be cut out around the entire surrounding of their basement. And in fact, the 50-foot pine tree in their backyard that their daughters had planted many years ago fell down during the storm. The tree actually took out part of their flower bed and their backyard fence. It fell onto their swing set and a part of their shed, and it actually crossed their back fence and bushes and went into their neighbor's yard and blocked their neighbor's shed. They are very thankful, though, for the family, her sister, her sons, and actually one of the son's wife and their son. their daughters, and all of her daughters' husbands and friends of friends that came and just helped and got everything out of the basement. And she's especially thankful because some of their places were actually damaged as well, the people that were helping her, and they were still able to make time to come and help her. And she just said that everybody that helped was absolutely wonderful.
The storm of the century in Norwood. Wow. Heavy winds, a lot of rain, flooded on Carter Avenue. Unclogged one sewer in the pouring down rain, me and my wife, just to get the water out of the driveway. It's running down our driveway, filled up our backyard. There's actually water bubbling in the very center of the street, up out of a manhole. So we've got additional water coming back into the street from somewhere. And this is from the backyard. That's the street, Carter Avenue dead end, in the 4600 block. There's our neighbor's steps that are flooded. And you can see the water, the torrent running down the driveway. Down in the backyard, I can't get out in the yard, but you can see the massive lake we have growing at the rear of our yard. Pretty intense. The radar looked like we had still some more coming. It's the most rain I've seen fall in my area in a long time. Never seen it run down my driveway like this.
Another one of the people that actually reached out to us was Stephanie Randolph, and she sent us some pictures as well as video of the church that she attends, and I believe as well volunteers at. And you can see in the before picture of this basement room that had gaming systems and whatnot, that everything was really nice and it looks brand new. And then in the after pictures, everything's just completely destroyed. You can't even recognize what it once was, and you can see the water line is almost completely up to the ceiling. You can see just things mangled and destroyed. You can't even recognize it. It looks totally different, and I know that this wasn't something that they were able to fix overnight, and I know that this was something that brought about a lot of devastation to not only this church but many others, as well as many people living in this part of Norwood and all of Norwood itself.
I don't understand. So here's what our room looks like now. Can't wait to be here on Wednesday for Awanas. Sunday for Sunday school should be super fun. I don't think we'll be redoing this pool table now.
That is a nasty huge bug up there.
So here's the fridge is here, which used to be there. Here's our bookshelf that's upside down. That was there. Obviously our bar is there. And the car that was here is now here, upside down. No, that's our air hockey table, foosball table, ping pong table. You can see how high the water went. It's over my head, like a foot from the ceiling, I guess. Not very good with measurements, but.
You have to have professionals.
That's not, if it doesn't cover it, we won't. We'll have to do it ourselves.
Oh, my dear Lord.
So we're here now at the Maple Avenue Apartments, and as you can see, I mean, the amount of glass broken and everything is just amazing. There's boards up along all of these windows on the bottom level here, and it's phenomenal. I mean, the amount of water rushing in through here is just amazing. And if you come with me over here real quick, you'll be able to see there's actually a sewer on this parking lot right here. And I believe there was another one in the back, and that sewer is pretty good size, and just the fact that that itself couldn't even keep up with the amount of water. This parking lot was completely flooded with probably about a foot of water, and it was just rushing in, and many sadly weren't as fortunate as others. So we're here again at the Maple Avenue Apartments, and as you can see on the door here, there is a danger notice declaring the structure actually unsafe. And this is actually one of 3 structures in the city that was declared unsafe for human occupancy. What exactly happened the night of the flood?
My name is Deborah Cunningham, and I live here in 1921 Maple, apartment 3. I was laying down with my cat, Honey D. I heard the lightning, I heard the hail. It was tremendous, but I didn't think anything of it. Then it sounded like water was running inside my apartment, which it was. It was coming down my wall. So I jumped up, my cat ran, she was skitsy. I always keep my window open for her. So I closed the window. Water started filling between the screen and in between the glass. And it was just raising. So I went into the living room. Water was squirting out of my window where it's not totally sealed. So I'm trying to pull all the wires up, find my cat at the same time. I wasn't able to rescue my cat because my neighbor upstairs, he was in shock, found out she was underneath the table at all times. So the water just started gushing in and started filling up. I'm panicking. I managed just to grab my mom's urn with her ashes in it and her pitcher. I'm screaming for help, to help my cat. Nobody would help me. It was just the lower level. There's only 3 residents down there who we totally lost out on everything. We were trapped in the building for about 2.5 hours. Water was up to the door, to the loft. We couldn't get out. Couldn't call 911. We couldn't call Norwood Police or Fire Department because obviously there was things around us going on. So the lady across the street went up to the fire department and got the fire department for us. We were eventually able to come out because the water receded. The news came and so forth. I'm very devastated for what I've lost, but nothing can replace my honeybee. But the city of Norwood has come together, and I am so touched because they're all looking for my honeybee, my cat, and they've come and donated things to me, and Facebook is a wonderful thing. Yeah, and I'm just totally touched. I'm devastated, but my housing director through Excel is going to be relocating me hopefully soon. I'm getting donations from friends that I grew up in Deer Park, Northern Kentucky, here in Norwood. Just nothing can replace my honeybee, but I got people looking out for it. Metropolitan Sewer District, I just seen them today, and they gave me a work order number, and they said there was a sewer that was clogged up, so I'm going to be filing a claim. This building is no longer. He told everyone they need to find somewhere else to go. That's about all I have to say.
Did you ever expect anything like this to happen?
Never. When I first moved in, with me living down on the basement floor, he did say there was a flood 5 years ago here to look into renter's insurance. So I did. I called around, but none of them covered flood. So I was just hoping by the grace of God while I was here that this wouldn't happen. But considering the amount of rain that we got, it's just not only here, it was all over. So it's a natural catastrophe. Disaster.
I remember when I first talked to you, you mentioned about somebody across the hall that was trapped in his bathroom.
Yes, his name was Ron. He said that when he heard me screaming, I was in the hallway. I was screaming for help and everything for my honeybee, and I had my mom's big urn above me. No one would help. But he said when he heard my screams, all he could, because I'm on this side, he's on this side, the water's coming. It came from Elm over a big wall. You can see it back there. So it's coming both ways. And he said when he heard me scream, all he could possibly do was get to his bathroom. He's not a swimmer. And he stood on top of his bathtub and hung to the shower curtain rod for a couple hours. People heard him screaming and knocking, but the knocking stopped and they were afraid that he was dead. But neighbors around us busted the glass. The fire department came and they all got Ron out, and he just walked out like nothing happened, which I'm grateful for. It's just a devastation, you know. You lose everything. I lost memorabilia, stuff that I could never replace, my deceased boyfriend's letters, my mom's cremation papers, just everything of my mom's, who recently just passed away last year. Furniture and things, clothes and everything. I just bought a $1,500 bedroom outfit. That's devastating. But all together, my cat.
Yeah.
My cat. She was my baby. I just rescued her around Mother's Day at my deceased boyfriend's grandmother. So she was very, very, very special to me. So.
How do you feel about, in spite of all this devastation, how do you feel about everybody coming together to help those that really need it?
I am truly grateful, and I want to just shout out to Crystal Brooks. If it wasn't for her, she sent me the link for the Norwood flood victim Facebook page. She went and got me a charger. She was down here for me. All the other lovely ladies, I can't mention everybody's names, who are looking for my honeybee, my cat. It's truly humbling how Norwood has come together. Salvation Army, I was able to go get some clothes there yesterday for free. And then cleaning supplies up there in Kroger. And then UHR, I got to give a shout out to them. I was renting a curio cabinet. I had another year. The general manager who lives around the corner understood, so he just paid it all off. And I'm just truly touched. My heart is so touched. But all I want to do is find my honeybee.
If there's anything that you could say to those that have been helping you, what would you tell them?
God bless you and thank you. And if ever you need me, I am right here for you. just message me, because everyone that I've met are now my Facebook friends. Just message me. I'll be there for you as well.
Is there anything else you have to say about any of this?
It's truly devastating. The next door neighbors, when it happened, looking at all this on the sidewalk, their basement got flooded. She told me that night, she was more worried about me and everything. And I said, did you get flooded? She said, oh, just a little bit in the backyard. But by seeing what they've been pulling out of their basement and the devastation, she put aside that night, because they had sub pumps, but it wasn't working, it was very slowly. She put aside what her catastrophe was to make sure I was okay. Her name's Ring, and her husband's name's Kevin. I want to give a big shout out to them as well. There's a lot of people around here who did help, and my heart is truly touched with I went to school in Deer Park. My class of 80, they've all come together wanting to help, and then I have friends in northern Kentucky that have helped and wanting to help. So it's just been truly humbling. My heart is touched. My family, on the other hand, what can I say? They're not here, but now I know who my family is. And this lady right here, who is my deceased boyfriend's mother, who is my best friend, she's let me stay with her, and she's always been there for me. She helps me in any way possible, and her name is Glenna Pritchett, and I love her dearly.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're coming downstairs right now, and oh my God, it is crazy. Let's be quick, but there is stuff just everywhere, and there's what looks to be a lot of industrial dehumidifiers down here right now, and it looks, wow. Oh, can't go in there. So if you look inside there, can you see in there? So you can see everything is just scattered in there, and I'll hold the door open if you want to kind of step in a bit more. But wow, it is just everything down here is just scattered all over, as you can see. I mean, there is just nothing left to be saved. And if you look, that window is cracked, and then if you look in her bedroom, you can see more of it. It's pretty bad down here right now, and so it's pretty bad. And if you look, I mean, just the hall is just completely destroyed. So so hang on, let me get a picture. So we're actually just down here right now, and it is absolutely amazing, just the amount of devastation. I never expected anything like this. I mean, you can see the floor is just completely destroyed. And then there's some other apartments. Look at this water line. Look, this is almost above my head. Honestly, just 2 feet from the ceiling. It is amazing. And you can see in there the door. Look at how much the door is warped from the pressure of that water. Wow, it is amazing. This is incredible.
That bitch is crazy. She's on.
Come on down. Let's go down and check it out. Stay under the window though. You're gonna kill your phone. Wow.
Wow.
That shit is crazy. Good thing there's no house here.
Right?
That's probably why there's no house here. Yeah. Alright, put your phone in your pocket. It's getting too bad. You're gonna muck it up. Power off the screen.
So we are here now at one of the homes affected by the flooding on Sunday, and as you can see, this lady's house, their backyard is actually a pretty steep hill, and their backyard it basically, a lot of water came through. There's supposed to be a sewer down here, which there is, and there's a 5-foot in diameter sewer pipe underneath where I'm standing right now, and apparently the retaining wall that was supposed to hold any water back, that was previously put in, the homeowner said that this is the second time that this has happened in 3 years, and the previous retaining wall that was here actually got washed away because there's so much water pressure here. So as you can see now, they're actually reinstalling a new retaining wall. This one looks a lot nicer, with rocks to allow the water to drain through, and then a new sewer cap right there. And just this is, I mean, you can see if you look in this backyard over here, it was just completely, I mean, their grass is gone. It just completely washed it away. You can see, I believe that was where the previous retaining wall sat, if not something else, but it was just completely gone. And I mean, this retaining wall, this new one, is about almost 2 foot thick, and this definitely should not fail, but this is definitely a reoccurring problem here in the city with the sewers having problems handling a lot of water. Describe to us what happened the night of the flood.
Well, the night of the flood, I didn't really think anything about it because we live in Norwood, and who would have thought that we would have flood? But my son Matthew came home from work, and he said, Mom, it's really bad out. And he said that the streets were flooded, and so I said, well, we need to go check the church. And he said, well, I just came home, so I'll go do that. So he came over, and I didn't hear from him. So I called him, and I said, Matthew? And he goes, Mom, you need to get to the church. It's flooded. So I came over, and there was about 8 inches in the basement. So that's where we stood with that. Never would have thought that would have happened. But.
Did you ever have any worry that maybe the church here, like before he came home and everything, did you have any worry that maybe it had flooded?
Well, the reason that I had him come over here was because someone posted on Facebook that the corner of Ellesmere and Cameron were flooded, and that's right in front of the church. Mm-hmm. So I said, we better go check the church. So that's why we came over to check.
Have you ever had any other water damage or any flooding issues here or anything?
Sometimes there would be water that would come in just a little bit, but nothing like, not 8 inches. We've never had anything that we've had to clean up like that before.
How much exactly did you guys lose to the water damage?
Right now we don't know. We haven't done all the estimates yet, but we had to tear out the kitchen cabinets, the lower kitchen cabinets, because of the waste. You know, we don't want to serve people food that's with things that have been contaminated. The refrigerator has to go because of the contamination that was in it, and the stove. So the kitchen is pretty much going to have to be replaced. As far as the other things, it's just things that were low to the ground. Some electronical equipment got messed up, like soundboards and things like that. But mostly it was just stuff that, some of it needed to go, but some of it, decorations and things that'll have to be replaced too.
Besides the church here, was your home affected at all by the flood?
No, thank goodness. I live on Feldman, and my house was fine. Our street didn't get any flooding, I don't believe.
Did you have any other worries about anything else the night of the flood?
Well, I tried calling my mom because she lives in Norwood, and I was afraid that her house would be affected, but she didn't answer. And I found out that she was on the Norwood lateral where the water was up to the median wall. So she finally got home. So everything was good after she got home.
Stories or anything interesting you saw that night?
Well, as I came over here, I came past Ashland Baptist, and there was a car floating in the road on Lafayette between, I think that's Monroe and Ashland. There was literally a car floating in the road. You just don't usually see that in Norwood, but it was just a night that I think we were all in shock. you know, all the businesses had to close down. The lights were off as we came down Montgomery Road at 8:30 at night. So, yeah, it was different.
You mentioned that you were actually on your way home from work that night. Describe to us what you saw coming home.
Well, I was on my way home, and I worked up in Westchester. I was coming down 75, and all of a sudden there's a big black cloud just sitting. It wasn't moving. Lightning, you could see lightning all over. And I was going down, I was going past Paddock. I ended up having to turn around on Paddock because everybody was just stopped. Got off Paddock, came up, was going down through the that area down through there next to Paddock. I was driving, I actually drove through a bunch of water. I had all that, and I saw that, and I was like, oh my gosh. I came up a hill, the wind started picking up big time. And there was trees falling everywhere, and that freaked me out because there's an old man driving next to me. A tree fell on his car, and I had to get out and help him, and I was so frantic. Thank God there was a paramedic around the corner, but there was power lines everywhere across the street. This wasn't just in Norwood, though. This was all around the city. And I made it down through Paddock. I went down. I was going to go down to Tennessee Avenue, down there next to the Gold Star and everything. And I couldn't get across there because the water was flooded. There's cars floating there. Then I had to get back on Norwood Lateral, which was backed up again. So I had to just turn right around again on the highway. Made it to Tennessee Avenue and Reading. Finally, there was a spot to where I could drive through. It was still flooded with cars floating, and I just couldn't believe it. Like, water was just like a waterfall, or a water fountain coming out of the manholes. It was like, where's all this water coming from? Like, the manholes were floating. Like, those things are not light. Those things were floating. I'm like, this is serious. And I called my mom saying, I'm close to home, but I don't know what else is flooded or what else is closed. So I made it up Tennessee, and it was just a water, like a river coming down Tennessee Avenue in the Norwood. I made it, came across a couple trees that were falling and a couple power lines. I made it home, and I made it home safe, thank God. But I saw some crazy stuff that I thought I'd never seen before.
When you were on your way home from work, did you have any worry that your church would be affected?
You know, I had no clue how bad it was. Like, I was working, I work at Aldi, and I was ringing out a customer, and she goes, it's about to come real hard down south. I was like, oh, okay. I heard thunder and stuff, and we weren't getting anything up in Westchester. They didn't get rain at all. But once I started driving home, I was like, oh man, that's bad. I didn't know it was just lots and lots of rain because I just saw a lot of lightning. I thought it was a lightning storm. But then people were saying that we had hope over harrowing, that if we had tents out still, that they would be gone because of the wind and everything. And they said that if the equipment was there, it would all be ruined. So I didn't know it was that bad because we had the couple storms that was a couple days earlier where they were just sitting there and hovering, and there was lightning and everything. I didn't expect it to happen on us. Like, that was a big storm on top of us. I didn't think it would happen here. I didn't think water would come all over, come into the building. We don't know how it came in. We think it came through the sewer. You don't think of it about poop water everywhere. We call it poop water. It's just gross, you know. It's a shock. I was shocked. I've never seen anything like that.
Have you yourself, at home or here, ever experienced water damage that was anywhere near as bad as that night?
Never. I've never experienced any water damage at all. I mean, this was like a disaster for me. Like, I was shooken up. I was frantic that night. But after seeing all the people posting about it just really struck me and really hit my heart. And I was like, gosh, God, why did you do this? Like, we just had an awesome event over the weekend, and we want the community to come together. But this really pulled the community together in a way that we weren't expecting.
And how do you feel about everybody, you know, people recently in the elections and everything, people have really been divided. How do you feel about everybody coming together for something like this?
I love to see it. I mean, it's great to see blacks and whites and Mexicans and Hispanics and all those just come together and work together. We have a Korean lady right over here across the street. she came over and just asked for help, and everybody went. Like, I posted on the Facebook page, the Norwood flood page, and literally 5 people came in 5 minutes. About half an hour later, when we were leaving the church, there's about 15 people there all together. And just to see everybody come together and work together to get everything taken care of, it was just awesome. I mean, I'm saddened with how it's gone around the world lately, but to see Norwood pull together like that really helps me out and lifts me up with the world. So,
how did you feel about seeing, you know, with the supply drive and everything like that? How did you feel about seeing, you know, I mean, they were actually experiencing almost too much supplies coming in at once. How did you feel about seeing all that?
You know, that was awesome. I thank the Cumulus Radio so much for that. I mean, to see them have that lined up down there at Linden Point is awesome. But I just couldn't believe how much support we had around the city. I mean, I saw James Bonzel post about the Springdale cleaning truck come and clean the streets down here, and just how they all pull together. The cities, all the schools were donating money to the boosters and everything, that they were fundraising and everything. That was just awesome. I'm just so thankful for a community and a city that's actually starting to come together. I think it's through the grace of God that that's happening. I just love it.
Do you think that after, you know, everybody recovers, after all this goes away, do you think that the community will go back to being divided, or do you feel like this is something that's going to go towards change?
Recently, with all the things that's been going on with the heroin and all the epidemics that's going on in the area, I think we're actually coming together now. They're finally seeing that we need to be together. People are experiencing it, that it's awesome. It's awesome to be together, and I think that it'll be better if we do come together instead of dividing. So I'm really hoping we stay together.
And is there anything that you would have to say to any of the first responders or any of the people that were out that night helping others?
Oh, not just that night. I mean, that whole week. I just thank them all, because this lady over here on the corner, she had nobody, and she came over to the church and asked us if we were with the church, and we're like, yes, but we can help. And I posted on the Facebook page, and literally 5 minutes later, 5 people were there to help get her stuff out, and they, by probably about an hour, they had all of her stuff out, and it was a lot of stuff. And that's just my first witness. Like, I witnessed that firsthand, and I was like so shocked. And all the first responders, we had some from Indiana come down. We had all the Norwood firefighters. They were all there. Our police were responding everywhere that night. But it was just awesome to see all the responses that happened so fast. Like, it wasn't like, okay, I'll be there in an hour. They were on it right then and there, and that was just so awesome.
So we're here now again back at the new retaining wall, and you can see there is 5 large concrete blocks that have actually been placed right here. And now there's not 1, but 2 large retaining walls, this one more than the next, to actually hold back any water that may run down this hill. And there is 1 and then 2 manholes actually right here, and underneath this that runs all the way down this hill, there's actually a 5-foot in diameter sewer pipe to prevent something like this from happening again. It was here before though, and now it's all been redone, and this water was running all the way down this hill, and it was just completely just flooding this area, and now it should not happen again. So if you look around the city, a lot of the sewers are actually blocked by things like plants, wrappers, and just trash. And so this is something that completely, if you look down in here, there really is no clear path for the water to actually get into the sewer system. My question is, when is this going to change? So we had a lot of stories being sent to us by people who had been in the flood or had somehow experienced it in some way or another. So I'm going to read you the story of this lady who goes by the name of Liz Wu on Facebook. And her story goes as this. So she says, after being caught on I-71 forever, for over an hour and a half with no idea of what was going on, I exited the highway at Dana. All the streetlights were out and traffic was chaos as everyone rushed to get home. This is what we've heard from many people who have sent in their stories. She says, a siren blared and a fire truck sped by, hauling a strange attachment. It was a lifeboat. Then I realized something really serious was going on. When I finally made it to dinner with the friends I had been planning to meet, everyone applauded when I walked in. They had been worried. A 10-minute drive had turned into almost a 2-hour commute. And this is a story that we began to see from many of the people like you that have been wanting to see this documentary and that have been submitting stories and pictures. And it's kind of crazy to think, we live in an area, Norwood is very centrally located to a lot of things. We're pretty much 15 minutes from almost anything you can imagine. Like, we are in the middle of something big. We have, the west side, the east side, downtown. Like, most of those things, like Northgate Mall and things like that, are really only about 15 minutes away. But being close to a river, which we are still not that close to, I've heard of stories of, the floods of, downtown Cincinnati when it flooded, before I was here and whatnot, and that's understandable. They're right along the river. But to see a city that is centrally located, that is, most houses are on hills. Like, my house, in fact, actually sits on a hill that is pretty, decent size compared to, like, the street level. And seeing all of these stories being sent in, and, about people describing what they saw that night, and the videos and the pictures of water being several feet deep, to me, that's not just a rainstorm, that's a flood. And a flood doesn't have to be where water comes up from a river or an ocean or whatever. A flood can be an excess amount of water from rain. And most people don't think of that. Most people think of a flood as when it rains a lot and then the river overflows. But there was no river anywhere near us. There is no body of water near us. It just flooded because the sewers stopped working that night. And so for her to see a fire truck go by with a lifeboat on it is a crazy sight to see, because I never in my lifetime, and I've been on this earth for 17 years now, I've never thought that I would be driving down the street and that the water would get up so high that I have to evacuate my car and leave, or that I would see a fire truck go by with a lifeboat on it because there's people drowning or there's people stuck. It's not something that you usually see, and thankfully nobody did drown that night and nobody died and there wasn't any serious injuries. But to think that they needed a lifeboat to rescue people from their cars on the highway and to save people that were possibly trapped in a flood that occurred in an area that isn't all that close to a river is pretty insane. So it does raise the question of why the flood occurred that night and what can be done to prevent things like that from happening in the future. So in light of all of the stories that we've featured throughout the documentary so far, and all the pictures and the videos you've seen, I figured that I could take some time to tell the story of what I saw and what happened that day to me. So the day on August 28th was pretty interesting. It started like this. So here's a bit of the backstory. So my mom turned 40 in August that year. So for her 40th birthday, my dad figured, I'm going to take her to New Orleans. So my dad was really worried, and this is kind of the ironic part, my dad was really worried leading up to the trip that while they were gone, because myself and my brothers are all old enough to stay home by ourselves and take care of ourselves. So while we were home, before my parents had left, my dad was really worried leading up to the trip that it was going to flood while they were in New Orleans. Well, the funny part is, it actually didn't flood in New Orleans while they were there, but it flooded here. So that's kind of the ironic part. We kind of joke around about that a little bit. But anyways, so the day started because it was August 28th, and we had just started school. We had like 2 days of school, and school had just got back into session, and so it was still kind of like a relaxed point in time. And my grandparents had offered to take us out to dinner that night because my parents weren't home, and so they figured, hey, like, you guys want to go out to dinner with us? Like, we were like, yeah, that's fine. So we went to Frisch's on Montgomery Road, and it was a beautiful day, honestly. The day was so beautiful, and it was a bit humid that day, but it was a really nice day. And so we get to Frisch's, and we're just talking, having a good time, eating our food, whatever. And then it starts to rain while we're there, so we're like, okay, whatever. Like, they did say there was a chance of rain, so we're like, okay, it's fine, you know, whatever. Just, it rains a lot. I mean, the weather changes a lot here in Ohio, so we figured it's fine. So then we leave, my brothers and I drive us home, my grandparents go home. My grandparents tell us before we leave, they're like, okay, if you guys need anything the rest of the night, you know, you want us to come over, hang out, if you guys need anything at all, any emergencies, just let us know, we'll be there. We're like, okay, sounds great, awesome, thank you. So they leave, and then we leave, and we get home, and it's still raining. I mean, it was whatever. It was it was just rain, whatever. I've seen quite a bit of serious rainstorms here in my 17 years of being here, and it wasn't as bad as any others, so I figured whatever. So it rained, and then it rained, and it kept raining, and this is where it started to get a little interesting. So usually when it rains here, it'll rain really hard, and then it'll let up. And then when it lets up, it's like, okay, you know, slowing down. Well, this is where it got interesting. It began to pick up, and it got stronger. And looking at the radar that night, I was actually starting to get a little worried, because I had never seen it rain so hard for so long. And then we noticed our backyard began to flood, and, you know, our street began to flood. Like, the storm drain was, like, you know, several feet out from the curb. And then we took to Facebook, and we began to see pictures of other streets around us flooding, you know, around the high school and stuff. And so then time went on, we're like, okay, whatever, it's just rain, like, it's flooding a little, whatever, we're fine. So finally, then my parents called, and it was my mom, and she called us, and she said, hey, are you guys okay? So she had heard the news from Facebook, and we were like, yeah, you know, we're fine, we're just hanging out in the house, everything's, you know, fine. And at this point, it was probably around 8, maybe. It was starting to get dark, and I remember her calling us, and everything was fine, and we were doing okay. And she just said, you know, make sure you guys stay safe. If you need anything, call your grandparents or call us. And we just talked for a little bit, and then that was it. And then it kept raining, and it had also began to storm, so there was also some lightning and thunder incorporated into everything. And so it did begin to definitely pick up. And I do remember sitting up here in my room and just listening to it. And I did spend a lot of time downstairs as well, watching it outside, because I've always been interested in storms, and so for that to happen that night, it was pretty cool for me to be able to see that. So anyways, we kept, you know, just keeping an eye on it, making sure everything was fine, and we began to see pictures, you know, more pictures and videos on Facebook. So we're like, okay, you know, it's pretty serious. And I believe we also got a call that night from my grandparents as well, just making sure we were okay. I think it was my grandpa. Yeah, my grandpa had called and just checked up on us, and so everything's fine. And then, you know, living in an old house, we went downstairs, and of course the basement, we had like a lot of like trails of water where it came in at different points. And we took care of it. It was a decent amount of work, because, you know, we had to clear things off the floor and clean the water up, but it wasn't, you know, anything bad. So we're like, okay, whatever. And I could see where the water was coming in. It was coming in pretty fast in this one spot. There was a hole pretty big where water was pouring in, but it was fine. And then it began to get really worse, and it kept raining. And I remember, again, it kept picking up, and I just remember like seeing pictures and videos. And then later that night, around 10:30ish, when it was actually dark out, my mom had called, and she asked if we were okay, and we said yes, and she told us that the high school had actually flooded. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, we just started school, we have school tomorrow, and now the school's flooded. There's no way we're gonna have school. And she's like, yeah, it's possible you won't have school, we're not sure yet though what's happening. So then we just talked for a little bit again about some other things, and I had also mentioned to her, so a little bit before that when it was still light out, and I have video that will be included in this at some point. I was standing outside. This was when it was still light out. It was probably around 7:30 or 8 or so, but this was after they had called the first time. So I was standing on the front porch watching the storm, and I was recording a little bit with my phone and just showing like how much was rolling down my neighbor's driveway and stuff. And I'm standing there and I'm getting ready to put my phone up, and I turn off my recording and I put my phone up and I turn to go to my door, and as I'm turning, all of a sudden lightning struck across the house, or across the street of my neighbor's house, and I was so scared. It literally like scared me so much that I went to jump for the door because it had blinded me. The lightning actually struck my neighbor's roof. It was so loud and it was so blinding that I freaked out. It was almost like it had struck like right by me, and it was not even, you know, 100 feet away. It was right on my neighbor's chimney. And in the process of jumping towards the door to try and get inside, I actually ended up hitting my head on the door and hurting myself pretty bad. And I came inside and I was terrified. I didn't know what had just happened. And then I got inside and I look, and there is my neighbor's chimney, half taken off his roof, and the rest of it is laying on the side of his house. And it actually knocked his chimney off his roof. And it was at that point I knew that this storm wasn't just gonna be, you know, a typical 3 hours and done. It was gonna last for quite a long time, and it did. So then, you know, going back to later that night, I had mentioned that to my mom, and I just told her I was fine, and it was pretty scary, and I had sent her the pictures of our neighbor's chimney. And then you know, we were on the phone long enough that she then told us later that she had got word that we were not having school tomorrow, just because the fact that at that point, not only did they find out the high school flooded, but also Williams had flooded, and I think a couple other schools flooded a little bit as well. And so for us, it was like, you know, typically when they're like, yeah, you don't have school tomorrow, it's canceled, you're like, yay. But then when you see the reason why, you know, this is not a typical reason. School has never been closed before for a flood here. And so to see that, it really kind of showed me like, I need to do something. So that's when the next day we had realized we need to go and we need to help clean, and we need to help people, because there's a lot of people that are in need of help. And so then that's when the next morning, when a lot of people had started to realize what exactly was going on, when I realized that I wanted help and my brother did as well. And so we did some things and reached out to some people, and we were actually able to get involved with some people to help with you know, helping and cleaning and stuff like that. But it had actually continued to rain into the next day, and by the time the next day rolled around, it was kind of crazy just to see, you know, all the footage and the videos and pictures and everything that was just pouring in. And then that's when, you know, we had realized that, you know, this was real. This wasn't something that was just easy to see. So going back to the night before, it was kind of crazy because after I got off the phone with my mom, which at this point, this was already around 10:30, the night of the flood on August 28th, my brothers and I kind of realized that we need to incorporate doing what we love into capturing this. So we set out probably around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, which at that point in time, if our parents are home, we probably wouldn't have done, but we're really glad we did, because that night we actually set out and we started to record, and we recorded everything, and we recorded driving around, seeing firsthand what was happening, and recording all of that was pretty crazy. And it was just insane to think that like we were seeing all of this firsthand. And then that's when we kind of started to realize like we need to capture all this. This cannot be forgotten. So that's then the next morning when it turned into by mention of myself and my dad kind of came to an agreement, like my brothers and I really need to capture this and put this into perspective for people that didn't get to experience it, and also for those that did, to see just how significant it was for everybody involved and how big of a movement it was. So that's where my story is currently, and the next days that follow the flood, we just began to help people clean and began to work on getting people's stories and finding out what was going on. And so that's where those stories stands for me. That's what happened to me and what I had experienced on August 28th, the night of the flood.